And we'd like to give honor to God, our creator, our provider, and our redeemer. We love the Lord with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our strength. And we love our neighbors as ourselves as we give honor to our founder, Mildred Miller, to our His Holiness and Blessed Memory, Master Malvin Davis, to our Mother's Board, boards at large, to the leaders of our country, to our uh, president and former presidents, especially our former president, who spoke so well to the students and their graduation yesterday. And to this congregation, I greet you with Hotep, peace abide, shalom. So next what we'll do is we'll have the reading of our scripture, and our scripture is the 62nd Psalm. Truly my soul finds rest in God. My salvation comes from him. Truly, he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I shall never be shaken. How long will you assault me? Will all of you throw me down, this leaning wall, this tottering fence? Surely they intend to topple me from my lofty place. They take delight in lies. With their mouths they bless, but in their hearts they curse. Yes, my soul finds rest in God. My hope comes from him. Truly, he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will not be shaken. My salvation and my honor depend on God. He is my mighty rock, my refuge. Trust in him at all times, you people. Pour out your hearts to him, for God is our refuge. Surely the lowborn are but a breath, the highborn are but a lie. If weighed on a balance, they are nothing. Together, they are only a breath. Do not trust in extortion or put vain hope in stolen goods. Though your riches increase, do not set your heart on them. One thing God has spoken, two things I have heard. Power belongs to God, and with you, Lord, is unfailing love. And you reward everyone according to what they have done. I've read the 62nd Psalm in the name of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Blessed Mother. Amen, amen, amen. Next is our Lord's Prayer, which we like uh, to repeat in unison, but I am going to make sure that we don't disturb each other, so I'm going to mute all, but I will ask you to repeat along with me the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen, amen, amen. For our next order of service, we're going to have a song. This is Love Lifted Me. For you, those who can see the screen, you can see it on the screen. Again, everyone is muted, so no one will hear you when you're singing, so you can just sing, but I'm sure you remember the words to this song. Um, I know I have two verses up, but I think we'll just go through one verse of it. So I'm going to play the song, Love Lifted Me. Okay, and now we'll have our meditation. Again, everyone is muted, but I'd like you to repeat after me as we do our meditation today. And our meditation is going to be based on those four standards of loving kindness, which is going to be a topic of our lesson today. So please repeat after me. Oh Lord, let me take no pleasure in evil. Let me rejoice in the truth. Fill me to overflowing with love that protects truth, protects the truth, believes in the truth, expects the truth, and endures through the truth. Love opens the door of infinite possibilities in my life. Amen, amen, amen. Okay, thank you for joining me in that meditation. And now we'll be going over into our lesson. And as I mentioned earlier, we're talking about love. And for those who can see the graphic, I know some of you don't have have them up, but for those who can see the graphic that we're using, it is an ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic that we use that means that is the word love. And for those who can't see, I just want to describe it a little bit for those who don't have it. But it looks sort of like a letter A that's kind of like leaning on one side, but part of it's kind of leaning towards the left of the screen, and one's arm or the arm on the left side of the A is long and circled like it was a kind of a sickle, and the other part of the A is straight like a like a handle, because that's what it is. It's like a handle with a blade on it. And then it has a rope that kind of like where the cross beam on the A is like a rope that goes across it. Now, this symbol for love is actually depicting a plow. So it's a hand tool that is used as a plow, is the letter or the graphic that the ancient Egyptians used for their word for love. And for me, what this kind of means as far as a universal symbol, because I think a lot of one of the reasons I like to use the Egyptian writing system is because it has a lot of the basis of universal symbolism in it. And this symbol that they use for love being a plow is trying to tell you that love should be a cultivating tool. Because a plow is something that you use to cultivate. It's something that you use to dig up the earth and to make it more productive, make it more fertile. So you're cultivating the land when you're using a plow on it. And so with this symbol of using this plow, is telling us that love should be something that cultivates. Love should be something that makes you more productive at the end of it, not less productive from it. So that's why I like showing this ancient Egyptian symbol of the plow as as a symbol that we can use to learn how to love, because love, as it says in the symbol, love should be something that cultivates our life. The person that you say you're in love with, they should be someone who cultivates you and to help you to become um, a better person, a better you through that cultivation. So so again, we're going to look more deeply at how to make love something that helps to cultivate you in your life and build you up. And that's the type of love that we should always be looking for, a love that cultivates, a love that builds you up. Love should never be something that is tearing you down, but something that cultivates you. Now, that doesn't mean that being cultivated is always nice and sweet and easy. Sometimes it's tough and hard, Just like if you were plowing up the land, it would be sometimes difficult work to turn that soil and to get it where you can get deep into that more uh, fertile soil. And love should be the sometimes love is the same way. It digs up into you to get that fertile part, that dynamic part, that part that can grow from inside of you. So we were going to be looking at those four standards of loving kindness. And like I said, we're looking at that 13th chapter of First Corinthians. This is something that I normally see a lot of people use at weddings to try to show how two people who are getting married should have this type of love. And sometimes it's not translated directly as love. It is called loving kindness or charity. But I see it, for me, it was a way of helping me of how to show love for everyone. Uh, I believe in the Bible when it says, or what Jesus tells his people, that, to teach you to love your friends, you don't have to do that. If someone is your friend and you love them, um, it's usually you don't need someone to teach you how to do that. But when you talk about loving your enemies, that's a Christed person, that a Christ-like person who can then show love for others. But to me, to be able to show that love for others, you need to really get into saying, what does this word love mean? And therefore, to me, this part of Corinthians that talks about love, especially the 6th and 7th verse, is a way that we can start, or well, let me say a way that I started to look at how do you be able to show love for all friends, enemies, everyone. How do you do that? So I looked deeper into this chapter, this verses of this chapter, to see that. And so the 6th verse, when it says, love takes no pleasure in evil, but rejoices in the truth, that it bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things, for me was a great eye opener on learning how to have a love that actually cultivates me rather than a love that is bringing me down. So the first word I think we need to look at in here, we're going to look at some of the words we use before we get into the full chapter. But the first word we're going to look at is when it says bears, when it's talking about bearing all things. Now, in the Latin, this is a word called stego, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And it says that the stego was actually a deck or a thatch. It was a cover that protects or keeps something covered, is what this word stego means. So it's talking about covering or protecting. So when we're looking at the word bearing all things, we're actually talking about, do we have a protective covering to cover with silence? But with what was brought to me about this cover is not a cover up, is not a hiding. It's saying that it is protection. You should be thinking about protecting, but as I said in the meditation, you're trying to protect the truth. You're not trying to protect your pride. You're not trying to protect how people are going to look at you, because all of those things are evil things. A lot of times your pride can be evil. And it says that love is not going to rejoice in protecting the evil. It's going to say, how do you protect the truth? How do you protect to make sure that you are covered with the truth? And that, therefore, when you're protecting yourself against things, then you are protecting yourself against the true evil. And the true evil is not you being ashamed of what is happening. The true that's not something, or that the true protection does not come protecting yourself from being ashamed. The true protection comes is from you making sure that you have protected the truth. Just to go a little bit further into that, when if it's something is evil, and some of the three of the greatest evils that I see in life, and this really comes from Marcus Garvey. One time we were looking at the opinions of Marcus Garvey, and he talks about the evils that come from a racist system of interaction of people, and he talks about these evils of exploitation, of oppression, and of elimination. He says that's what the racist type of attitude would do. That first is going to try to exploit you. It's going to, and exploit just means it's going to try to cheat you. And the people that don't have the right type of love in their heart, they will first look at you and think of ways of exploiting you or cheating you. And that we should recognize as an evil. So we don't want to allow ourselves to be cheated, because then you're not protecting yourself. Then you're not having on, I even call it the whole armor of God. You know, in Ephesians, it talks about having that whole armor of God, having on the whole protection. And if you're letting someone cheat you, or then you don't have on part of your protecting. You're not protecting the truth. You're not protecting righteousness. You're not protecting your faith. You're not protecting your peace. You're not protecting your salvation, and you're not protecting the Word of God. And those are some of the principles that it talks about in Ephesians, of having that whole armor of God. But we need to protect ourselves from these evil ideas. And that first evil idea said that we need to protect ourselves from is exploitation. If you, to me, if you're really showing love, then you should show a protection, protecting the truth from exploitation, which means you just don't allow yourself to be exploited. Even if you can't help it, you're always trying to find ways on how can I find a way to use the principles of infinite possibilities to protect the truth and protect the truth from evil, because evil is not going to lead you to have a love that cultivates you. And those three evils that Marcus Garvey talked about, that evil of exploitation, that evil of oppression, and that evil of elimination. In fact, the way that Marcus Garvey talks about them is most prejudice systems, they will use them in that order. They will first try to exploit you. If they find out that they can't exploit you, they're then going to try to oppress you. They're going to try to find ways to hold you back, to knock you down or put you under. They're going to try to find ways to oppress you. And again, that's just as big as evil as exploiting you. God wants to protect you from being oppressed. And if they find out they cannot oppress you, then they're going to look for ways to eliminate you. And that elimination can go all the way up to the point of genocide, to kill you. But they're going to try to eliminate you, get you out of the blessings. So we have to watch for that, letting love being not being able to protect us, because it's supposed to protect us from infinite possibilities. So for me, that first standard of love is that love helps you to learn to protect, but protect the truth. Don't protect evil things, and then say there's love. And that sometimes, even when we're talking about your children, we think, oh, to protect our child, if we know our child has done something wrong, we want to hide and somehow make it so that he's not wrong. No, you should be finding a way to still show love for that child, but protect the truth, because the truth is what's really going to help to cultivate that child and help that child to grow. Trying to protect the child by hiding the truth is actually going to make the child less able to work with the divine principles than it is going to be able to make him more able to do it. And so we need to use our infinite minds, our infinite possibilities with our mind, to find ways to protect them without trying to cover up the evil, without trying to just avoid the embarrassment of saying that this has been done wrong, but looking at how do I protect the truth so that it can be a source of cultivation for the child. So the first word that I think we need to understand in understanding those standards of love is, what does it mean by bearing? And from now, for me, that bearing means a protection, but a protection of the truth. The second word is, it says to believe all things. So we want to look at that word believe. What does it mean to believe, this is a word that is pistio, if I'm pronouncing it right, probably not, of the Latin word, and it is a thing to say, to think something be true, to be persuaded of, or to credit, or place confidence in, and is a thing, universally, is a thing being evident of a preceding concept. So this word that we have, and it relates to a Hebrew word that is actually based on, that is very close to the word amen, of truth, of belief. And to me, this means is what principles are you going to base your life on? When it says believeth all things, it's still talking about believeth all things that are true. You don't believe a lie. That's not what they're saying. When you're saying believeth all things, this does not mean, because to believe a lie, to support a lie, to believe in a person when you know that person is not known for or is known for doing something wrong or doing something evil, and you say, well, I'm just going to have faith and belief in them. Is that really faith and belief in them if you are protecting them or believing in something that you know is an evil inside of them? We always have to look and say, is this a evil or true evil in this person? And do I want to be aligned with evil concept? So in saying believeth all things, it start off by saying is that love does not like evil. So it's not telling you that you should believe evil things or you should accept evil on yourself. It's saying that you need to have the divine principles of the truth as the standard or the foundation of what you believe in. Um, and for a moment, I'm going to actually pause. I know we haven't gotten to the other part of the lesson, but I'm going to actually pause and see with those 2 points that we've talked about, because we've talked about uh, bearing all things and believing all things, and see if there's someone else that might have some comments to make about it. So I'm going to unmute everyone and give us a time just to talk about those 2 points about bearing all things, which is protection, and believing all things, which means to have some standards for the truth that you live by. So everyone is unmuted. Are there anyone have like to make any comments?
Frank going with
Hello?
you putting on some sauce?
Other cup.
The whole other cup?
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, this is Deacon Jackson. I was just, first of all, I want to commend you on bringing the lessons, Father. It's such a wonderful lesson. I was reaching out to you this morning, not even knowing what the lesson was all about, telling you the exact things that happened to me with my job. You know, they constantly try to make me think that I'm important and they love me and they care for me, but yet they didn't have no problem of doing just what you were saying. They I took on an assignment of going down to the testing site, picking up 5 boxes a day from the people that they do the testing on and everything. And they made like it was going to benefit me, but it really wasn't benefiting me. It was benefiting them because they thought it was possible on their behalf a good idea to pay me $45 a day to go pick these things up. And, you know, once I received my check, I responded to him, and the only response that he had to give me was, okay, then Monday I'll find somebody else to do it. But this is what you were saying. This is what people do when you start throwing the truth back at them and let them know that, hey, this is not right. This is not fair. How could you use a person like this knowing that this virus is deadly, that this is an infection plague, but I was willing to go do my part and everything, but because I trusted in you guys, thinking that y'all was going to really look out for me, and come to find out y'all was more into benefiting self. So, you know, and I'm just thanking God that he continued to keep me safe, and he will continue to provide for me, because I feel like I stepped up and I did the right thing. I wasn't going to just let nobody take advantage of me, because I'm old enough to understand that everything ain't about money, but it's about, too, the situation that you allow people to put you in. So thank you for the opportunity.
Amen.
It's so true that but I'm saying that having someone exploit you is not what God put you here for. And you have to watch out for people because they
Mhm.
will, just like you said, they think they're doing you a favor when they're just doing it to exploit you. I remember one time when I was working at the Black Archives, and we had some conversations, and we got in some conversation with some of the Cubans that were in Miami at the time. Black Archives is in Miami, and during one of the conversations, there was a man who had now moved up uh, and was a part of one of the government agencies working some things, but he had come from Cuba, and he talked about the hard time he had in Cuba and how he came over and how this man let him come and sleep in his store, and how this man would have him gave him odd jobs, and he would go to the man's house and he would cut the man's yard, and he would do all these things. And he said for a big part of his life, he was so grateful to this man and the things that he was doing until he actually came and learned some things about America. And he said, and what he learned was this man would have been exploiting him, that he thought that he was being helpful in doing all these things, but this man was exploiting him because he was getting all these things done for free. He was getting somebody to watch his store at night for he was getting somebody to cut his yard and do all these things that he could have been paying the man something for these things, and the man could have made it. But it said it took him about the first 15 years of his life to realize that the man was actually exploiting him, that the man was getting more benefit out of him than the man was giving back. And so a lot of times when we see people, and the sad thing about it is a lot of times when these people are doing these things, it's such a part of the American system that they even think that, oh, I'm doing good, I'm helping this person, and not saying all the time that you are exploiting this person, that you could have been giving that person a decent wage, you could have given them a job, you could have actually been paying them for some of the things that you had them doing, and they could have made it on their own if you would have done this. But
Right.
but no, you don't want to do that. You want to say, oh, because a lot of times when they do these things, they think that I'm being so good. I'm giving you an opportunity. And the sad part about it is when they're in their mind, a lot of times they do think that they are giving you opportunity. So you don't think about them, oh, he lied to me. They didn't lie to you. They used the natural system to do what? To exploit you. And they justify it to themselves by saying, oh, I'm doing good. So often in their minds and their heart. That's why to me it takes love to be able to see some of those things. Because if you get angry and say, oh, I'm going to hate them for what they did, you may not get to see the true light in which they did it in. They did it out of greed, and most of the times the things they're doing out of greed and fear. And greed and fear doesn't mean that they hate you. Sometimes I even hate it when they someone telling, oh, we're going to get them for hate crimes. I think they should be getting people for some of the greed crimes that they implement. They should be getting them for some of the fear crimes that they have, because it's not always, to me, when I look at it, it's not always hate. They don't go out there and hate you, but do they fear you? Are they greedy in what they're doing? And so the bigger crime is, so that's why it's sometimes so hard to prove hate. And that's what we have to do so many times when someone does something that is harmful to you because of greed, when someone does something harmful to you because of an unjustified fear, they will feel that, oh, that was justified because it was not hate. But you can end up just as dead from greed and fear than you can from hate. And if we don't start working on the real problem, which is the greed and the fear, that we will continue to we will continue to run into these problems. So that's why I think of this learning how to protect ourselves when it says bearing all things, learning how to believe in true principles, so that we can know when we're fighting against these things that there's a truth out there that we need to get in, or what you believe in. There are principles that will help us to get through these things. But the mics are still open. We have anyone else who'd like to make any thoughts?
I just want to say that it's a very interesting lesson, and we're listening, and we're all in.
Okay, I think we got St. Gwen that's on the line with us now.
Yes, Gwen and Troy.
Okay, glad to have you all with us. Glad to have you, Richard. I'm glad you're enjoying the lesson. As I said, we're talking about what I call the 4 standards of loving kindness. And remember that word that we have in Corinthians that's it's sometimes translated as charity, sometimes translated as love, and sometimes translated as loving kindness. So I think, and the reason, one of the reasons I did this is because in the commandment for Pisces, it says to love thy neighbor as yourself. But we really need to know is what are they talking about when they're saying love? What do we have to, I try to give myself a standard on what is love then? How do we love these neighbors of ours and love them in a way that we can still have based on a foundation of a truth? And that's why we're looking at that part of 13 Corinthians that looks at that and looking at these 4 words. So we've talked about 2 of the words. I'm going to mute everybody again.
Father Tyrone.
Yes,
Father Tyrone.
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Something?
Yes.
I want to say that when you were talking about love, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about love thy neighbor. The neighbor is anyone.
Mm-hmm.
It's anyone, not just the neighbor on your street or down the street or across the street. It's anyone when the Bible says thy neighbor.
Yes.
Right? Anyone that you come in contact with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then when you say the love, sometimes, you said it in some type of way earlier, but I can't really recall exactly. But you're saying that love is not always supposed to be like nice or
In a way, sweet. No.
or sweet, right? So I wanted to comment on that because now I had to kind of think about it and meditate on it for a minute and listen to you more, and I'm thinking about that love that you say that's not always nice and sweet, because sometimes when people are a certain way, you kind of have to teach them with a tough love, like you were saying. It's kind of like it's almost like teaching people how to treat you kind, teaching people how to treat you with love. Because our daughter went through some things, and me and Troy, we had to talk to her, and we were teaching her how she can turn it around and teach those people that were being that way to her. How you don't combat with them, don't argue with them. It's ways that you can use the reverse psychology to teach them. It's something that Troy does at work, and he said sometimes he didn't like the way people would talk to him over the radio at work, or how they would be, they would be rude, or they would be this way or that way. So then, me and Troy was talking about this a few years back, and I was saying, baby, we have to teach them how we want to be treated, and what we will accept and what we will not accept.
Yes.
So that they will know, and it is their decision whether they're going to take heed to that, or try to transform in some way, or will step back in some way. And when people would be a certain way to Troy, like when they're calling him on the radio or whatever, then Troy would come back and say, yes, sir. No, sir. Can I help you, sir? Yeah, sure, I'll do that. Just the way he would talk back to them,
Mm-hmm.
eventually they would transform and start talking to him that way. And they would start acknowledging him back the same way, because he had to teach them how they needed to treat him. But he had to teach them from his actions and the way he said things and the way he did things. And then as time went on, they reciprocated. It's almost like a respect. It's almost like giving a respect to get the respect in a way.
Well, to me, it's like you be respectful and you will attract respect unto you.
Okay.
It's the way I look at it. If you're respectful, then it somehow it starts to get people to start respecting themselves and respecting you. So it's about being respectful. And you're right, it's about teaching. That's why when I was saying about that ancient symbol of love, which is that plow, that you plow out, you're always trying to cultivate, but you're trying to cultivate the truth. You're trying to cultivate and sometimes like dig it out of some of the people who, because many know that most of them, the way that they have learned how to be in life is barbaric. There's so many of their practices are barbaric practices of thinking that, you know, to be mean, to be hateful, to be aggressive is the only way to achieve things in life. And what you have to show them that no, we can work together in respect. And I'm going to be a respectful person. I'm not going to take on this evil, nasty attitude that you want me to take on, and I'm not going to let you get me out of my truth. Because you know when they even when they're yelling at you, when you act back to them as a respectful person, what gets on them is that you don't cower down to them like you're their lap dog or something like that. I'm sure when Troy was saying it back, he was saying it back with a powerful, respectful voice that's showing you that I'm not, what he's saying is, I am not your dog or your for you to be speaking to me like that. I'm going to speak to you like a man. So you need to, or a human being, and of a certain character, and you need to speak back to me in that same character. So, like I said, it's not cowering down to them, not being letting their fear get on you. I remember we had a lesson a little while back where we talked about silence. And with that silence, I tried to emphasize the fact that silence does not mean that you do not react to the things that are happening to you. To me, the silence is the peace that you find inside of yourself, that peace that you find down within yourself to be able to respond clearly back to the other person. As an example of that, I remember when I used to take martial arts or kung fu, and Bruce Lee and some of the others would talk about that. But in kung fu, they have this philosophy of this saying that you have to have think of your mind like water. Think of it as like it was a pool of water, and if you had a pool or a lake of water, when you get into a fight, what you don't want to happen to that pool is you don't want a lot of unnecessary splashing around in the pool. Because if you're splashing around in the pool when you're in this fight, you will not be able to detect when something harmful is coming towards you. You know, in a pool of water, if you drop a pebble into a pool of water, there are waves that comes from that pebble, right? Pebble.
Right.
You drop a pebble into the water, you can see those waves that comes from it. So it says when you're in a fight, when the other person is attacking you, it's going to cause these waves to come at you. But if you're in the splashing around in the water, how are you going to see the waves that come from the pedal that's being dropped into it? So you want your mind in the fight to be calm enough so that you can see what is actually being thrown at your mind. So it's saying so the reason that you keep your mind calm is not so you don't react, You actually keep your mind calm so that you can react better to the things that are being thrown at you.
Yes, yes.
So a lot of times we tell people about being peaceful and the silence. They get the wrong idea and they think you don't react to it. But it's saying that no. Uh, and I found that because when you're taking the martial arts and you're getting into they're always happy you get into these fight situations. And one of the things you had to learn how to do when they put you in those sparring matches is you have to be calm and sensitive enough to be aware of what's happening around you, and that means that you're just going up there and you don't just go around growling and yelling and making more, trying to, because sometimes that's the way they fight. You're making all the noise, you do that. It says no. When you get into a real serious fight, you should try to be calmer so that you can actually be aware of what's happening around you, so that you can respond to it quickly and accurately. So that's the piece we're looking for. How do you have a piece inside of you that you can respond quickly and effectively to the things that are happening to you? Not how you can have a piece that you got to go and hide yourself away, or or try to go in a corner and mope somewhere, or that you have to have all these bad feelings that are continually boiling up inside of you. It's how did you find that calmness of mind that makes your inner self more responsive to the evils that are maybe around you? Is anyone else? Do you have more?
And I just wanted to follow up, Father, too. It's very important, too. We have to remember how you not only start a conversation, it's how you end it, too. And I remember I told him, I said, well, Mr. Richards, with all due respect, and then at the end of it, I ended with, I do thank you, though, for the opportunity, but this opportunity is not for me.
Mm-hmm. You might find out he still might have to come back to you, because some of the others may not want it either. And he's going to have to find somebody who is dependable. And a lot of times, if he does get some of the others, they're going to be as dependable on you in doing that. Because another people with things, what people will do, if they see someone is trying to exploit them, even when the person has done it knowingly, what they will do is, if you're only going to pay me a little bit, I'm only going to do a little bit of work. So I'll just reduce the amount of work. So you'll try to cheat the person back. Now, what you did is stood up and said, look, this is not fair. I'm not going to accept that. But a lot of people, they wouldn't do that. They would just say, okay, you give me the assignments. I'm just not going to do a good job because you're not paying me enough. And saying that means you're trying to fight evil with evil. But when you stand up and tell them, I don't think this is fair, I don't think this is right, and either pay me more, or let's respectfully stop working together at this. That makes you again begin to work with the truth, and actually, to me, gives you that better feeling inside that I was truthful with the person, that I'm not going to try to hide for him and not do the work, because as you did it, you did all the work that he gave to you until you found out that he was cheating you. You did it with all the zeal and all the truths, and carrying out those orders to the fullest of your abilities. And when you saw that he was not going to reciprocate to you and being truthful on what he was going to pay you for it, you went to him and you told him about it. That is living by the truth. That is living in a loving way. You know how many, like we said, we talk about this as being in marriages. I think one of the reasons they talk about this in marriages is, in marriages, sometimes you have to learn how to go there and argue with each other. In a marriage, it's not always good, but sometimes you have to learn that there's certain things that you got to do what? Speak up and tell them what's wrong if you really want that marriage to work. You just can't sit and hide it and think it's going to work. It takes that communication. So what you did was you communicated and you worked it out. That is living to me by these standards of love that we're talking about, these four standards. We only talked about two of them so far, but those are the standards of love that we should be living by and that we should see as how to make our life better. Always, like I said, thinking about that ancient Egyptian word for love, which is Mary, which is a hoe. How do you hoe? How do you keep cultivating with it? And yes, when you're cultivating, sometimes you have to dig into things and turn it up and find out what is that fruitful earth, that nourishing earth that's underneath, and not just look at that crust that's on above. Anyone else have any comments? We got two more words, and then we may have time to look at the whole chapter. So I'm going to mute everybody again for a second. We've talked about the word of bearing all things and believing all things. And now we want to go to the next word, hopeth all things. How do you hopeth all things? And this word hope, to me, the better word to think about when you're thinking about what you hope is, what are your expectations? What are you expecting from the truth? What are your true expectations? Not what do you call them? Your fanciful expectations, but how do you get the expectations that are based on the truth? So when it's saying hope, any usually in the New Testament, when it talks about hope, it's talking about expectations. What do you expect? And we should expect the truth to manifest. That is your best expectation, is to expect that things are going to be done based on the truth. All of our expectations should be, is it based on the truth? Now, when I say truth, again, I didn't have a symbol for it, but I still like to think of truth in the way the word truth is explained in ancient Egyptian concept. In an ancient Egyptian concept of the truth represented, or it's called, the word is ma'at, but ma'at was not only the truth, but ma'at also meant balance. Ma'at meant harmony. Ma'at meant a reciprocity. That means that it was a reciprocal relationship between the two things. It meant order. It meant all these things. So it says that truth has all of these things that are part of it. How do you balance things out in life? How do you have them where they are in order and that they create harmony in life? So your expectations should be these expectations on how do I get to the truth. And I think if you think back on some of the things that we're saying about being in a relationship and working out so that you can work together in harmony, working things out so that the person is not doing evil towards you and you are not doing evil back towards that person, that you can say it is truth, that it is balanced, that things balance out. Because when you're really doing things, and you should, because it's saying you should expect the truth. Because a lot of what we've been talking about is, if you're working on a job, should you expect a true and honest payment for your work? That is saying, what is your expectations? And we should not be under expecting things, or things that are less than the truth of what you're receiving. So a part of it is when it's saying hopeth all things, it means, what are your expectations? And are your expectations based on the truth? Are they based on infinite possibilities? That's what that means when it says hopeth all things. Is, are your expectations based on principles that will last, like the truth? Are they based on an orderly progression of things? Are they based on finding harmony in life? And our last one of the four is endure. It says endureth all things. And that means, are you accepting principles that can last? So the truth doesn't change. So if you're involved in something and it's not something that can remain, that can carry on, then it is not based on love. You're not in a situation you love, and when you don't think that you can continue in it. And a lot of times when we're in situations, we are not in enduring situations. Just like when you're talking about that job, how can you endure on this job when you feel that you're not getting the right pay? When you're being cheated in it. So it's saying that through love, your love can help you endure the truth. It helps you, that love you have for the one you show the other, it will endure, it will preserve, it will continue to abide with you. So it's saying that fourth principle of the truth, or the fourth principle of loving kindness, is something that can endure. Because when you're doing things out of whether you call it charity, whether you call it love and kindness, or whether you call it love, it sort of almost energizes you as you go along. It endures because it's sort of like a generator in you when you have that right type of love when you're involved in something. And that generator will help you to be able to keep going when things don't seem to be all right around you. That love, a loving kindness, was saying, no, this what I'm doing is so fundamentally a truth that I have to keep on going. You know, it's like that song that says, you know, I've come too far to turn back now. So these things of love should also endure. So far we've talked about two other additional points. We've talked about hoping or expectations, and we're talking about enduring for things to last. So before we get and look at that whole passage of the 13th chapter, and so I can get a chance to get something to drink because my throat is getting kind of dry, I'm going to open up the mics and see if there's someone else who would like to talk about some of these points. So I'm going to unmute everyone.
Father Tyrone?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to speak on something because when you were just teaching, I thought about something. I remember one time, you know, on my job, I remember getting more than once. Like, you know, they would give us bonuses when I was working, and
Yes.
whenever I would get my bonus or something, or someone knew it, you know, some of the other workers or what have you, you know, a lot of the ladies would always say, "You gonna tell your husband about this bonus? You gonna tell him about this check?" And I used to say, "Yes, I'm gonna tell my husband about this bonus. Yes, I'm gonna tell my husband about this check." And their mindset would be like, "Why? If he don't know, why are you gonna tell him?" Because he's my husband. And some of them would be married too.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them would be married too. But their mindset would always be to keep it away from their husband. Well, why would you tell him this is your money? No, this is our money. You understand? Because the same way, any money that comes from me, any money that comes from him, it's supposed to be for our home and for our growth. And you were talking about that earlier,
Mm-hmm.
right? About the growth together. And it was befuddling to me how it was okay that their mindset was to lie to their husband, to keep it away. And they looked at it as, it's not a lie, he just doesn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but it's a lie because you're not telling him. A lot of people think that a lie is not a lie because they didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
You understand that it's not that I'm lying to him, I'm just not telling him. And I used to say, what's the difference?
So you have a concept, yeah, that brings up a concept from the Korean gospel. When the a Korean gospel says that a lie is to deceive, and if you're deceiving the other person, it becomes a lie. It's not that you didn't tell them, but some of them they never built up that trust or understanding in their marriages that they could actually tell him, you know, share the fact. of when they made something. And it's beautiful that y'all have a relationship that you can. And to me, it's the best relationship you can get in a marriage is when you can share those types of things, when you can share, you get money. But some people, the way their relationship is based and in their marriages, how they divide up the finances are sometimes so secretive that it's ridiculous sometimes. That they can't, and sometimes they really can't trust the other person to know what they got. Now, some of them they say, yes, that's your money, and you should be able to do with it what you said. And some of those women who are telling you that, the crazy thing is, some of them they want to keep the money so they could do some things for the family. That if they let their husband have the money, some of the husbands really sometimes aren't no good. And if the husband and if the husband knew about them having some money, they can't tell him because some of them, I'm not saying all of them, but some of them you have to figure they couldn't tell the husband because if they told the husband, they probably couldn't buy the things they wanted for the kids with that money because that husband would take that money and he could gamble away, he can do something. So to me, it's more beautiful to have a relationship between a husband and wife where they can share those things, that they can be able to find out what both of us have, and we can work through getting some things together. When you can work together. But when you think of some of those who are not telling, some of them are not telling for a very good reason. And you don't want to go into a personal life and find out how good or bad their husband is. But always try, but it is good example that you showed them that there is a love, there is a relationship that you can have with someone else that can be based on being truthful to that person. But that's something you have to work on in a relationship. And many of them have not achieved that level to be able to do that in a relationship.
Okay. Okay.
So anyone else have any thoughts about your hopes and your enduring? That means, yeah, and remember your hopes means what are your expectations from the person? And you have to really look at your what you can, and I said one of the expectations is one of the things I was talking about in saying that is some of them can truthfully expect if their husband knew that they had extra money, that he would do the wrong things with it. And for those that known that they're saying that if I tell him about it, I am not even going to be able to help our family as much. I would say, don't tell him. But it'd be better. The way to really make it the better balance is find a way to cultivate that person to the point that y'all can share on the things that you receive. Because I think if you were to talk to some of those ladies more about their money situation, you'll probably find out that they are jammed up, uh, and and that and their finances are jammed up. And the sad part of it, in many relationships, both of the partners are terrible at money, and that's one of the hardest things to be in. You in a relationship and neither one of you can handle money. Neither one of you saves. Neither one of you prepares for the future, and that you're always in a tight. Uh, and remember, it's always about cultivating. How do you cultivate the most fertile sand? And even in those situations, because if you're in a situation where your husband didn't have a lot of sense with money, you would find a way to keep someone back. In fact, it reminds me of a story that mother used to tell. She used to tell this story of this man, and I think we got everybody's on here grown, so I'm gonna go and say this. But there was this was a Jewish man that mother knew, and he was married to this woman, and he decided that every time that the wife would sleep with him, that he would put some money in the jar. He had a jar there, and he put money in there for her in this jar. And he wasn't being faithful to his wife, and he was running around on his wife, and he had these businesses that he was not managing well. And so, because of his lifestyle, he had to go to his wife and tell her, said, "Honey, I messed up in our businesses, and we're broke. We don't have anything. We're not going to be able to make it." And the wife looked at him and said, "Oh no, we can make it." He said, "Well, I'm telling you that I'm broke. My business are going down. I don't have any way to keep the family going." He says, "But what you don't understand," he says, "remember that jar you had that you had putting money in?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Well, I used that money, and we have a um, um, a rooming house at this such and such a place that we're getting rent in from the people. In fact, we have more than one. So I have several rooming houses around where we make money off of them. And we'll be able to use that money that we're making, because most of it I've saved up, and we'll be able to use that money to be able to get over this problem and to get your businesses back up and running." And from that, the man was so uh, happy to be get out of this trouble that he decided that, I need to stop fooling around. I need to get my business together. I need to actually stick with this woman because she is saving me, even though all these terrible things I have done to her. And Mother would always end this lesson by saying that a woman can bring more through the back of the house with a teaspoon than the man can bring through the front door with a steam shovel.
Jeez. Okay.
That's one of the things we'll talk about. That the woman can bring more into to the back of the house in a teaspoon than a man can bring into the front of the house with a steam shovel. So, so some of them women, they know their husbands, they know he's going to mess up, and they know it's going to be a rainy day. And what this lady did, because remember, she didn't complain without him that, "Oh, you're treating me like a prostitute, that you're putting money in a jar every time you have sex." They said, "I'm a prostitute." No, she took that money, and because she knew he wasn't managing his money well, she took it and she managed it, and she got things set up that when his rainy day came, she was able to show him what she had done with all this money and to save the family. Uh, uh, Even saved the family business. Because remember, he had messed up the business. He had run around all in the streets. But she was able to, the small things that he was giving her, and take that and making it something big. And you'll find that in a lot of marriages, women are doing that. And in a lot of marriages, that's why many of the women always have them like a little nest egg on the side. And many of them, many women don't tell them about that nest egg on the side because they know that one day they're going to need it. Um, Would anyone else have any thoughts?
No, that was just interesting. I'm just glad that you elaborated more on when I was talking about the young ladies on my job because you opened my mind to the possibilities of what they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes we can only relate from our situation, and so when they say certain things, that's why I said I was befuddled because I wasn't. Sometimes we have to put ourselves in other people's shoes. I'm not in their shoes. I wasn't in their shoes. They wasn't in my shoes, so they couldn't understand my point of view. and I wasn't in their shoes, so I couldn't understand their point of reason of why they felt the way they felt. So you made that you enlightened me a lot when it came to that I always have to not I always have to think that there is a reasoning
Yes.
behind it. That
Yes.
there's a reasoning behind it. Because everybody isn't good with money, or like you said, sometimes the household would not be blessed from the money if the husband or the wife knew, or this and that. So you open my mind up to that right, everybody's situation is different. So that's why they couldn't understand why I would tell my husband, and I couldn't understand why they wouldn't tell their husband. So now that kind of made me understand that more, and it's just a good lesson, because we're supposed to. You always say that we're supposed to learn from every aspect.
Yes.
From every aspect. Just as well as learning each sign. So it's making me go back to remembering that I have to open my mind up to the whys, and before I make inner judgment of them.
Mm-hmm.
Potentially wise.
Yes, because the shoes you're wearing are better shoe when you can actually be truthful with the husband. But you do have to realize that not everybody is living in that situation. And I think it's good for them to find out that there are couples living like that, because some of them never get there because they don't. But because so many families are living in those uh, situations where they can't talk to each other, they can't trust each other, and know that you got to develop that trust. You got to develop that and know when to bring it. Because even in this story, the wife had to know when she could actually bring out the fact of what she had, of what she had done with
Right.
those things. So, like you said, life is a learning process. To me, one of our prayers talks about that is to bless my eyes that they see not only the right interpretation, because like I said, the right interpretation is yes, you have this nice, harmonious, great relationship with a person, and y'all can talk things out, but to really make it spiritually, sometimes you have to see some of those wrong interpretations. What is a person going to do when they truly know that if they let that other person know that their money is going to go to gambling, their money is going to go to drinking, the money is going to be going to buying clothes that are not going to support it. And I think if you look at the lives of many of their women, they're not saying, I'm not going to tell them and I'm going to take this money and I'm just going to splurge and buy something for myself. You'll probably find that many of them were saying, I'm going to take this money and I'm going to hide it for him because I know when that light bill comes that he was supposed to be paying, that it's not going to be there. Or when the gas bill comes, that it's not going to be there. Or when my children need something, the money is not going to be there unless I take this money and put it to the side and hide it from them. So you probably will,
Right.
from what I'm saying, you probably will find more wives have a little hidden something somewhere uh, uh, to make sure that when that man leads into some trouble, that there is something there that they can use.
Okay.
Okay, anyone else?
Okay.
Hey, Daddy, this is on. It's a good point
Alexander?
making too that you can love somebody and have, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the man is a bad man either. It doesn't, it just means that he may spend it differently than what the woman is expecting. He could be a good husband and all this other type of stuff. And it just could just mean that it's a situation where, yes, the woman knows that he may have some different quirks about how to spend money.
Yeah, because hopefully I said bad money manager. Yeah, there are going to be bad things like drinking and other things, but a lot of times it's that they're not good money managers. Because one thing you'll sometimes find in a lot of marriages is you'll end up with one of them can manage money and the other one can't. Because you even have some relationships where men who will make money and they will take the money home and just give it to the wife, and they don't even want to bother with any. They have something in their pocket for them that they know they're gonna mess up, but to really keep their family going, they just take either a part of their whole paycheck and just give it to the wife.
I was just
And
about to say,
yeah, and sometimes she's a good money manager, and he know it's great when a person know that they're not good money manager. And I've seen cases where there were women who are not good money managers. And if that man were to come home and to give that woman his whole paycheck, that the family would go down. So it's different for all households, but they need to work together so they cultivate a way that they can find stability. They can find peace within their relationship. But it can be different in every relationship. There'll be different ways where they can manage it. But it all should, like I said, it always should be on that expectation on how do we develop this true solid foundation. Because remember, that's the other thing about the truth. It's a solid foundation. How can we establish this solid foundation in our family? Anyone
Eddie,
else?
and I think
You know,
yeah, I think that's another good point to make too, because me being a person who's younger, I mean, I'm younger than most of the people on the call. I'm still in my 30s, but I think it's
okay.
also good to just kind of put out there that, you can't get so caught up in, and I had to learn this in my marriage, in my relationship, you can't get so caught up in what society is saying the woman is supposed to do versus what the man is supposed to do. And I had to learn that in my relationship where, I can cook, but I'm not the best cook. My husband actually cooks better. So he usually ends up cooking more than I do, where in real society is really supposed to be only the woman is supposed to cook. You know what I mean? So I just think that people have to kind of, like you said, find out what works for their relationship and do that, and don't get caught up in what people say is supposed to happen and what's supposed to be the social norms of a relationship. And I
So,
think my husband, we kind of approach it in ways of, we have different lanes. So some lanes are his lanes and he can do them, and if I know that he does them better, then I let him handle those lanes. Not to say that I can't pick up the lane, is incapable or unable to do it in that moment. But there's also lanes that I have that he knows I'm stronger in. And so he's okay with me handling those particular situations or whatever the case may be. And, you have to get to a place when you're with somebody to have to be able to talk about those lanes and figure out what works for your household and your family. And I feel like, a lot of people don't necessarily do that because they're stuck with what they've heard society is supposed to be for what men do in a relationship and what women do in a relationship. And I think
Amen.
that
I agree.
starting to grow, and women are working and different things like that, those lanes are starting to change, and people shouldn't be afraid to change what the lane is supposed to be just because of what society has said it was supposed to be from eons and years ago back.
amen. Yeah, like you have to
Amen.
look at yourself like remember when we said it's like a plow. Love is a plow. You got to have a field, and in that field, you want to put your best workers at the task that they're best at. You don't. If you had a field, you wouldn't want to take a person that's bad at something and say, "Oh, even though you're bad at it, the society say you're supposed to do this," and then have know that you're better than that person at that. Uh, but you want
They done, they
to
done, they done, they done plowed. They done took the plow through the farmland and tore up
the plow.
all the harvest.
Yeah.
And tore up the harvest.
Yes.
Tore up all the harvest. Now everything all messed up, and so and you can't eat, and you can't sell it, and you can't grow,
Yes.
from it because they done tore it up. So
Yeah.
when your daughter was talking, and she was saying. She was talking about the staying in the, each party, being in their lane and having their lanes. I started having visions at that time of when people are not in their lanes, right? That there's
Mm-hmm.
going to be a whole lot of car crashes, and you think about the car crashes, and you think about the chaos on the highways and stuff, and sometimes it's a 3-car or 4-car or a truck turnover, something. So when she started speaking in lanes, and staying in your lanes and knowing which lane is right for you, right? Because if you're not in the right lane, what type of car crash or what type of crash are you going to have? What type of impact is it going to be on your relationship in the long run if you're not staying in your lanes or not knowing which lane is right for each person in order to make the relationship or the marriage work?
Yep.
So
And
I agree. Good
the one
point,
other
young
thing
lady.
about too is about the lanes too is one thing that me and my husband often do too is even though something can be deemed my lane, I still like if it's something that's my lane, I still teach my husband for the most part how to manage that lane. So just in case something happens to me, he may not do it the same exact way I do, but he at least knows, okay, this is what what we doing. It's more of the finance part where I handle all,
Right,
and he still pays, most of the bills, but he's more to give the money to me, and then I go and pay all that stuff. But he knows, okay, this is where we have the bills here, this is where we have the bills there. So if he can't get to paying that particular bill a certain day, then he can go ahead and still do it, but and so I think that's also the important part is, teaching the other person your lane and then helping them grow into the lane that may not be as strong for them to be able to be strong enough for
right,
them to push the lane through just in case something happens to you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I think most
right,
people
right. Because that
claim
could be a hindrance if you don't know how to do that lane.
right, and it's one thing about acknowledging, hey, I'm not as strong in this, and I'm not as strong in that. That's how you also go to where you teaching each other different things that you know better or that can help that person. And I think that's how you build it up is by teaching them, hey, he's not as strong as my like when me and my husband first got together, computer one. He didn't really know computers and didn't really, get into that or whatever the case may be. And I was like, look, you have to learn this because this is where the future is going. So I've taught him certain things on the computer that he didn't necessarily know. And now he's at the point where he knows how to use the computer, or now the cell phone, how to use the cell phones a lot better than me. But I remember it was a time where he didn't even really like using computers at all. And now he's comfortable with it. And, so it's just, it's not about claiming and only sticking to it. It's also teaching the other person how to manage that lane as well, just in case they have to get in that lane and help you out when you can't do it. So
That's
that's
so
what
Right,
true.
right,
Yeah. It's like in a job, you may have a person who's your best person at doing something, but if you're wise, you're going to have some cross training in there. You're going to have someone, if that person is
right,
on
right,
vacation or that person is sick or if that person just can't do it, that there's enough cross training on there that somebody else can do it. You don't want to have the whole office to stop just because the person that normally does something is not there. Everybody should be able to say, pick up some of that slack. So yes, you're very true that you have to work and cross train and have everybody that they can come and pitch in and help the person on in areas that they're weak. If you can teach them to be able to do those things. So anyone else?
Father
Welcome
Tyrone,
to yes.
um, can I go back and elaborate on something dealing with the love thing again?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I was thinking about, okay, like, say if, okay, I know what I was trying to say. Okay, say if, you know how you said the husband might have different plans for the money, the wife might have different plans with the family or what have you. Okay, now when it, say if sometime it gets to the point where, like you said, the husband is the good provider, the wife is the good provider, they're both doing their part, right?
Mhm.
And they're both, pay bills. They both sacrifice for the children, for the family. I'm just using the husband as an example. What if it gets to sometimes when the husband feels like, you know what, I sacrifice majority of my check, or we sacrifice majority of our money for the family. Now, why is it not okay to sometimes just take this money and go splurge or go have fun, even as a couple? You get what
Mhm.
I'm saying? And do something for us. You get what I'm saying? Sometimes, um, it's because it's like the mindset. I mean, is that okay sometimes? Because sometimes people will feel like there's always going to be bills. They're going to
Yes.
come every month. They're going to come. There's always going to be, you know, I'm not saying don't pay the bills. I'm saying it's like sometimes that money that you want to put in that nest egg, sometimes just to keep your mind, and just to keep that stability and that I'm not good with words right now at this moment. They're not coming to me. But you understand what I'm trying to say. Sometimes that balance just to keep you going, you have to have that breaking point where you go and do something that you can say. Because sometimes you say, what is all this for? And sometimes the bills and the responsibilities is not enough. You start to feel like, is this all I'm here for? Is this all we're here for? You get what I'm saying? Because sometimes, the husband or the wife, one of them may feel like, no, it's time for us to do something for us, or for me to do something for me.
That's so
I'm
correct.
finished. I just wanted to say that.
No, that is true. That and that's another thing that they have to work out in a relationship. Because some people, well, everybody needs something that they find is their pleasure, and you got to have that part, that something that gives you pleasure. Is beautiful if both of you have the same pleasure, but sometimes you don't have the same pleasure. But you should always have something that gives you some type of relief, gives you some type of pleasure. I have to remember my grandmother, Mother Miller. She was a hardworking woman. She would be up all night sometimes talking to people. She would, be working night and day. But do not call her doing Family Feud. When Family Feud came on, she wanted to be sitting in front of the TV watching Family Feud. That was like her release, was to sit up there and watch the game. And Family Feud was just one time. It was one time she liked to watch the Grand Ole Opera. So she would always, and that was like a comedy show on where they had, well, it was like a variety show they had on. She would like to see that. So with some things that she would have, that she would take the time to just give some me time. Or sometimes she would, during the summer, she would close down consecration this summer so she can go to the mountains and find some me time. You have to have something that helps to regenerate you. And many times the things that we're doing in work, they're not the regenerating part of it. Like we said, that part about enduring, you need something to help to build your endurance. Um, and sometimes that does taking saying some things that you do, but still you got to work it as a family. Uh, Sometimes you can find things that will help you build your endurance together, and sometimes you're gonna have to say this other person likes to be a thing that kind of inspires them and get them charged up. So I will go and let them just do that on their own. Again, those are things
Yeah.
you got to work out on how you can get that person to get that endurance. Because remember, that fourth principle was to endure. But to have that endurance is, how do you preserve it? And sometimes preserving it means to let that person go and do what gives them that enduring spirit. And it's different from different people, and it's different for different relationships. So yes, you have to work out how I'm going to make sure that we can endure. And part of that is, I know the guy that taught me about financial planning, and this was a guy when I was working at the Miami Times. He was like a financial writer. He wrote a financial column for the Miami Times, and he was talking about how to set up a budget and how to work that budget. And but one of the things he said that you have to have on your budget in your paycheck, because he would have you set up your paycheck so that every paycheck kind of like was divided up for a portion of your monthly bills. So you knew with each paycheck that it was like the same amount of money that was coming out of each paycheck, but that amount of money would be able to take care of your monthly bills. And there was a part of it that was devoted to savings, but it was another part of it and he used to call this mad money. And he said, and then how much ever is left over, you can consider that mad money. And that's money. And he called it mad money because that was money that you would put in your pocket or put it wherever you wanted to and do whatever you wanted with it. And he said, and to look at that mad money that you got in the paycheck, that was you paying yourself. All the money, because we always talk about we're paying bills, we're paying you're paying a light bill, you're paying for a house, you're paying for a car. And he said the part of the money that you should be putting aside is when you pay yourself. And with that paying yourself part of that money, you should be able to do whatever you want with it. Sometimes it'll be small because when you first bring it out, that money might be real small, but you still saying that, but it's mine. If I want to go, if all I got is enough to go out and buy me a butternut or a sneaker, what? That's my money. And as I build up on the and using my budget and doing the things, or if I want to just keep saving up that money until one day I can, even though it might be small, I'll be able to save up enough to go to Disney World or whatever. That you always have to have that thing that how am I paying myself? How am I rewarding myself what I'm doing? And a lot of times people forget that in life. They forget, give yourself some type of reward, give yourself some type of pat on the back, give yourself some type of pleasure that you can get that is just your pleasure. Because it's not all just about responsibility. It's about actually getting a pleasure out of things. And sometimes that pleasure is to if you want to take your mad money and give it to charity, and that's what helps to generate that enduring spirit within you. Let that person do what they want with that mad money, because especially when it's not going to interfere with the other parts of your managing your family.
Okay. Can I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So let's say, like the woman. Okay, let's say like the woman and the man was that the man was he was paying his wife every time they slept together, or what have you, putting money in the jar. So that was kind of like her mad money.
Yes, because that was money.
That was her mad money.
Yes.
Basically.
Look what she did, but what she did with it is she actually built up something that made her family more stable. That was her money, because she gave it to her. She could have done what she wanted.
But in so many words, that was her mad money.
Yes. Because some women, if they would have did that, he'd put money in the jar, they would have got it there, and their mad money could have been getting herself a dress every now and again, or buying some kind of makeup, or buying something that just pleased themselves. So your mad money is your mad money. Whatever inspires you and gives you that enduring power in your life, that's what your mad money is for. So yes, that was exactly her mad money.
Okay, that was her mad money. Let's say that she was a homemaker.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say she was a homemaker, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was his way of giving her mad money.
Right.
Because let's say she was a homemaker. Let's say she was taking care of the home and doing everything that needed to be done at home. Because that's still work too.
Yes. It's still work.
Okay.
But how much you get? Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, people need money. Yeah. They need money for just themselves to give them whatever. And you can't. And unfortunately, a lot of times you can't tell a person what's going to give them that pleasure, but you give them the freedom that whatever it is that builds that joy of spirit within you, let the person do it. Let them have that to go ahead and enjoy. Because some people, some person that might be traveling, they might take their mad money and say, I just want to go on a trip, or I just want to go and sail on a ship, or I want to go to the beach, or whatever. Usually, when they're doing things like that, they're doing it to build up that joy spirit within them. That thing that when we're talking about that endurance, something that helps you to remain and to deal with it. And all of us have something that we do that inspires and in charges, gives you a charge within yourself. And you have to be able to feed that enduring spirit just like you were fertilizing that land. You need that endurance, and part of that endurance is doing something that gives you pleasure.
Okay. Okay.
Now we have someone else on the line who that's in as a call. Um, I know who most of the calls are, but who's the last caller to come in? Maybe someone who does not have a mic. And we do have some people. So there's but like I said, we're glad to have you with us. Just want to appreciate you. Know that did recognize that you're out there. Thank you for joining in on our discussion. Trying to see now. I'm going by my sheets here or our spread things. We've talked about, I think the four. We've talked about just the four. We did not look. Funny thing, we did not look at the other parts of the 13th chapter of 1 Corinthians. For those who may remember, this is the one that said, "Do I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but do not have love? I only a sounding gong or a channeling." Changeling symbol. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains but have not love, I am nothing. Um, if I give all my possessions to the poor and give over my body to hardships that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. So in the other part of it, it's saying, a lot of times when we're talking about love, we would think of love, if that person shows a love, if they can go out there and they can talk a good game. Because that's the first one saying that you can speak the tongues of men and of angels. We think because they can talk a good game that they have love. And if they can have a gift where they can prophesy, oh yeah, then they got love. Or if they have such a faith that they can say something, they can move a mountain, that then they have love or that loving kindness. Or if they can give all their possessions away, if they can make sacrifices, they have love. But this says that you can have all those things and not doing out of loving kindness, not do it out of charity. You're just doing it to be seen. But what we need is a love that's deep within us that can actually make us learn to work together with each other and to cultivate each other, and even see ways of how we can cultivate even those around us through the way. Many times we have to cultivate them through the example that you live. That the example when we were talking about Troy and working with the people and being respectful until they learn how to be respectful. That example that you can give to people can help to lift them up and help to cultivate them. But we should be looking at love, that love is something that cultivates. It's not just about showing off. It's not just about what sacrifices you can make. It's about how to actually cultivate. That's how I like it when it gets down to that 6th verse where it says that love does not delight itself in evil, but it rejoices. It can rejoice in the truth. But remember, part of that rejoicing is even that part we're talking about enduring. Are you doing the thing that helps you endure, that helps you live through it? In fact, we've been going for a while. I don't think we need, and like I said, this is one of my favorite. Another one of my favorite chapters is something that I like to go back to every now and again because it's such a powerful principle, but something that you have to keep, reminding yourself and working on it. How do I learn how to bear or protect things? How do I learn how to have faith or have the right principles to live by? How do I get to have how to hope right? How to have the right expectations? How do I learn to endure? All of those, I think, are those great principles to help you abide. Because remember, this chapter also says that the three things abide now, and that's faith, hope, and charity, or love and kindness. But the greatest one is love, because love to me is the one that brings the other two together. One thing that I saw about when you look at these 4 standards, when it talks about bearing all things, believing all things, uh, hoping all things, and enduring all things, is that faith and hope are actually a part of it. They're in the middle because it says it's bear. It says believeth is the same root word as the word faith. So they have faith there. it has the word hope in it, and then it has enduring. So it's saying that love kind of like incorporates all three of those things that abide, those things that help you live in life, through your faith or the principles that you live by your hope or the expectations you have in life, and through love, by the actually acts, the way you really perform and act or do things in your life. The greatest one of those is, how do you actually perform them? How do you actually do them? When it says the greatest of these is love. And the mics are still open. Does anyone else have any thoughts they want to bring?
I just wanted to remind.
I'm gonna wait.
I wanted to remind you that your grandmother used to like to listen to Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy.
And Jeopardy.
Those were her pet peeves during the week.
She had, and she would get a joy out of it. Because when I was a joy out of it. Because I think the Grand Ole Opera was the one that was crazy, because the Grand Ole Opera was, a lot of times it was country singing. The Grand Ole Opera it wasn't, opera. We're not talking about, but I can't even think of the opera singers now. We're not talking about opera music. The Grand Ole Opera was country. It was totally country. And they would just singing those country songs. And Mother would love to watch the Grand Ole Opera. She would love, like you said, Jeopardy. With certain shows that was her time for herself. But when you think about it, everybody needs that time to help to build up their endurance. It's sort of like, and it's saying, if you really love, because remember, you got to have a love for yourself too. So you don't just have saying a love. And that chapter tells me a love is not all just about sacrifice. It's not always just about being able to talk a good game. It's not always about being able to prophesize. It's about, do you have that something within you that can keep you feeling protected, that can keep you feeling that you're on a stable principles, that keeps your expectations high, and that can help you to endure. Anyone else? I know there was someone else talking with Mother Loretta. Did someone else have something? Someone else was speaking? I didn't see who it was.
Father Tyrone, I wanted to say something else. Mm-hmm. Okay, when you go, I want to go back and reflect on a lady again. The lady where the man was putting the money in the jar. Her husband putting the money in the jar.
Oh, you like that story, huh?
Because the reason why I know, because my mind keeps going back to thinking, as far as he didn't realize it at that time, but he was also planting seeds.
Yes.
Planting a seed at that time. Mm-hmm. So it's not to just say the wife. I'm just saying, if he would have did that in any scenario, not just the wife. I'm using the wife because that's the story you gave us. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's the story you gave us. But when you're talking about, what I'm saying, when it comes to any scenario, when you have trust enough to plant that seed, or you were talking about greed earlier, mm-hmm. and at that time he wasn't being greedy at that time. So I'm saying, I'm just using that story because that's the story you offer. I'm talking mm-hmm. about anybody that gives to another, anybody that gives unselfishly to others. I'm saying, when it comes, I don't know if it's just money, but I'm talking about money right now. When they give unselfishly to others, they're planting seeds. Mm-hmm. That's planting seeds, and at some point in time, that seed is going to grow. But sometimes you plant seeds and that seed doesn't grow exactly from the place where it was planted. It could shift over somewhere and come from somewhere else. But it's just, my mind is just going in that direction. Metaphorically, when I'm thinking about the story that you told, that you said Grandma used to tell.
Yes, Grandma used to tell it to her. And it is about a seed. Now, I don't think that this man had the right. ideas in mind when he was giving her the money. Um, but it just shows you another thing that talks about in the Aquarian Gospel and also in the Bible is when the seeds hit fertile ground. That's a beautiful part about it. He was giving it out, but the seeds that he was giving out hit fertile ground. She was the fertile ground that he put the seeds in. So it's not just about planting the seeds, but how do you get those seeds in fertile ground? Because it talked about the person scattering. You can scatter seeds, and some of your seeds can get in the thickets. Some of them can hit crusty earth, but the ones that you get down into that fertile ground, and the fertile ground is why you plow. You plow ground up to get down into the fertile part of it. So yes, you want to plant seeds, but it's the seeds that are going to hit fertile ground that are going to grow and give you the beauty from it. And it just so happened that he planted his seeds in a fertile ground. His wife was a fertile ground that was able to take his seeds and make it grow for her. So yes, that is
so the businesses, they weren't fertile ground, or he probably did something to mess it up.
He did something to mess them up. They were good businesses, but he messed them up through mismanagement. He messed them up through the way he managed them was bad. In fact, I don't fully remember the story because it may have been they hit hard times or it may have been depression. I'm not sure exactly what it was that caused his business to go down, but I think most of it was mismanagement. But I always love that story to Mother Teller and love it about she letting you know that let that mother force come forth because they can that mother, because remember a mother represents nurturing, whether you're talking about mother or wife, it's that nurturing spirit, and sometimes through that nurturing spirit, when they're talking about a woman can bring in more through the back door with a teaspoon than a man can bring into the front door with a steam shovel. It's talking about that nurturing motherly spirit, like we were talking about in the Mother's Day. That it is from that nurturing motherly spirit that it can make a small thing like a teaspoonful of something actually grow more for you than he would. Because remember, he was bringing in money from these big businesses and he was doing all these things, but still it can get out of hand from you. But it's sometimes those little things you're doing that you're letting build up over time that are going to be your greatest source of success. Anyone else?
Right.
Well, I just wanted to say that when you all were talking about money, I used to always tell Zandra, I know, and my children that I used to listen to Susie Almond before things start happening to her. But she had this thing where she said everybody should have like an account of money saved up for 8 months where you could live off it if you lose your job or anything, that you'd have this fund that you'd be able to live off it for 8 months. So putting some money away, while you are making it, make sure you put some money away so that when hard times come, you won't be caught in a pickle. And it brings me to think too that, a lot of times when people get that income tax money,
Oh yeah.
they don't take it and put some of it away.
No, they don't.
And I have worked with plenty of people who take it and they buy cars, they buy furniture, they do this and they do that. And you don't ever hear them say, I took some of it and put it away. And she used to say you should have a fund, not a fund, but a
Savings.
some of it, so that over time you build up enough that you would. What is that? Oh, that's
Yeah,
our.
I got to replace a smoke detector.
Oh, okay. So just know that you should be building up when you make money. you should be saving some of it for hard times. Don't spend it all,
Yeah.
especially that income tax money.
Especially, you should have, yeah, you can have some type of savings plan just for your life, but have something. Always have that nest egg in the back. I think even Mother Loretta would tell us a lot of times. My mother was saying, even sometimes just have your storehouse of some food and stuff put away, so that when you have hard times, and even when other people have hard times, that you have something that you can share with them. Um,
Yeah.
be prepared.
Yeah.
Those old stories will tell you that don't think that no hard times are going to come in life. Hard times are going to come. And are you going to be
Yeah.
prepared to deal with the hard times and the good times? Because remember, when I was saying you had that man money, I said to you, I hope you heard me say that you have a part of your money is for a savings. So after you've had what pays your bill, after you have a portion of your money going to savings, and part of that savings is to build up, like what Teresa was talking about, that hardship money. It should be part of that savings plan. That part of it should also be is this is my money. I'm going to pay myself, and I'm going to enjoy it.
Right.
Yeah, but see, you can decide how much you want to give yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, 'cause like I said, when you
Yeah,
first
pay
do a
yourself.
budget,
You worked hard for it, so pay yourself too.
yeah.
Take a little of that and pay yourself.
But that should be a portion of it. And because I'm saying you need all when you're thinking of that budget, try to put all of that into that budget. Don't think you're going to put together a budget and it does have nothing in there for your own pleasure, for no plan yourself. Uh, hopefully Teresa sees which one it is because I'm not in it.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, I'll come and find out.
Oh, I see it. I see it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we know
That's
the
why you change them all.
So anyone else like something to say? And still says one caller that I'm not. Is it one or two
I
callers?
think that's Malcolm.
I think that's Malcolm. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, we're glad to have you here. Just like the people to acknowledge your being here. And I'd like to thank you for being here. I know they say that we're all stuck away, but there's still ways that we can connect with each other and reach out to each other and be a part of each other. Um, Parts of the lesson, I'll save it for another day. I had some other things, but uh, I think we've had a good conversation. I actually did y'all enjoy the conversation today?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Brilliant.
Okay. So I am going to end the recorded part of it now. I will keep it open a little bit afterwards. But just for our recorded section, I'd like to do our dismissal and say, may the love of God illuminate your way. May the will of God direct you each day. May the truth of God all errors depart. And may the peace of God will dwell in your heart. Amen. 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 And I'll start recording.